On that day, a rift appeared in the sky, and monsters from another world, called Mostro, invaded the human world. Humanity had no way to close the rift, and the Mostro unleashed massacres to their heart's content. Even the military was powerless, plunging the world into unprecedented despair, or so it seemed. Then, the awakened ones appeared. Possessing extraordinary powers, they became humanity's last hope against calamity, and people called them heroes. One morning, in a chaotic city overrun by monsters, destruction spread unchecked. Ordinary humans fled in terror, desperately trying to save their lives. On a street corner, a flaming object appeared, catching the attention of one of the Mostro. It rushed toward the flame, but stopped abruptly in front of a woman holding a child. The child cried out in fear. Just then, someone arrived in time. Our protagonist, Rendaban. He stepped between the Mostro and the mother and child, shouting for them to run while he held it off. The creature swung one of its sharp wings at him, but he blocked it with his sword, struggling to hold his ground as the mother and child escaped. But then, the Mostro launched its other wing, striking Ren in the side and sending him flying. He crashed into a wall, coughing up blood. When he opened his eyes, he was shocked to see the Mostro's gaping mouth inches from his head, ready to devour him. Fortunately, a man appeared just in time, wielding a sword. With a single swing, he decapitated the monster. Meanwhile, on the ground, other men burned and slaughtered the Mostro effortlessly, as if it were child's play. One of them, a man with fire-based powers, declared it was over and incinerated the Mostro still flying in the air. Within minutes, all the monsters were dead. As the people emerged from hiding, realizing they were safe, they praised the heroes. The child from earlier turned to his mother and said that when he grew up, he wanted to be just like the commander. The mother, overwhelmed with gratitude, thanked the heroes repeatedly. Kandayu, the youngest commander in the history of the heroes, was an esper with lightning abilities. Known as the Star of Hope for humanity due to his unmatched strength, he inspired awe. The deputy commander, Riku Darin, was a young yet calm and composed esper with overwhelming power. Lastly, there was Sakuma Retsu, a fire-wielding esper with a rough personality and the ace of the assault squad. Daban stared at them, silently vowing that someday he would possess that kind of strength too. Later, in a safe area, the healer Shiraishichio warned him to be careful. The bodily fluids of the winged Mostro were poisonous, and even contact with their vapor could cause poisoning. She handed him an antidote, which he gratefully accepted and drank. But then, he was startled when someone scoffed, asking if a powerless weakling charging at the Mostro was just plain stupidity. Retsu mocked him, asking if he had a death wish. Darren added coldly that if someone like him was considered a hero, it would be a disgrace. Daban remained silent, but Retsu pressed further, sneering as he asked if Daban thought he could erase the stigma of being a traitor's son. That made Daban snap. He shouted that his father was not a traitor. Retsu kicked him, sending him sprawling, and reminded him that his father, the former commander, had abandoned his injured comrades and fled to the other world. Daban stuttered, tears streaming down his face, insisting that his father would never betray humanity. Retsu pinned him to the ground, shouting at him to shut up. Daban growled in pain but glared at Retsu with defiance. Retsu smirked, taunting him, asking if he wanted more, then finally let him go, telling him to prove himself when he was ready. Daban stood up, trembling, as Retsu sneered that he could finish him off with just one finger. Furious, Daban lunged forward, throwing a punch, but before he could even get close, Retsu's flames engulfed him. Daban collapsed to the ground, rolling frantically to extinguish the fire, while the others mocked him for his foolishness. Chio rushed to his aid, shouting at the men to stop. She helped him up, scolding them that a child shouldn't bear the burden of his parents' actions and that they should let it go. Retsu dismissed her, saying she was too soft, while Darren added that she'd be fooled by him too. Suddenly, Daban's heart began to pound uncontrollably. He wondered what was happening. It hurt so much. His veins bulged, dark blood visible beneath his skin. Chio noticed immediately and realized it was the winged Mostro's poison. Daban recalled the moment he had slammed into the wall earlier. It had been covered in the monster's sting. Chio quickly reached for an antidote, assuring him she had one last dose left. But before she could administer it, someone stopped her. It was Yu. She hesitated, looking at him with concern, but he assured her it was fine and told her to leave it to him. Reluctantly, she handed him the antidote, glancing at Daban one last time before rushing off to help the child Yu had mentioned. Yu took the antidote, then teasingly asked Daban if he wanted it. However, he pointed out that a nearby dog hadn't been looking well for a while and might have been poisoned. With only one antidote left, Yu asked what they should do. Retsu chimed in, saying there was no need to hesitate. The dog was useful in combat, unlike Daban. Darren added that Daban had acted like a hero earlier, but now he was willing to let the dog die. Yu stood up, remarking that it seemed everyone shared the same opinion. He opened the lid of the antidote and poured it onto the ground, leaving Daban stunned in shock. The dog approached the spilled liquid, sniffed it, then began licking it. But then, to Daban's horror, the dog turned around and defecated on the antidote. Daban shouted in disbelief for it to stop, but it was too late. Yu acted as if he hadn't known the dog wasn't poisoned and had merely had an upset stomach. Trembling, Daban demanded to know why they were doing this to him, shouting about the cruelty of their actions. Yu simply replied that Daban was an eyesore. He placed his foot on Daban's shoulder and coldly stated that the son of a traitor should live like a worm. Instead of knowing his place, Daban dared to dream of becoming a hero, a mistake that made Yu sick. With that, Yu kicked Daban's head, sending him flat to the ground once more. Trash should remain trash, Yu added. You should have been discarded long ago. He warned that if Daban's name didn't appear on the casualty list, he'd be labeled a pathetic deserter, just like his father. Yu and the others walked away with Yu ordering Retsu to seal off the entire area, claiming that Mostro were still lurking nearby. Retsu gladly agreed, relieved that the nuisance was finally gone. Darren mentioned that the party tonight was still on, as if nothing had happened. Daban lay hopelessly on the ground. He tried to stand, but couldn't, collapsing again. Cursing loudly, he wondered why he was being treated this way, after risking his life to protect others. Frustrated and on the verge of losing consciousness, Daban suddenly felt a strong aura behind him. His vision blurred from the poison. He peeked back and saw a Mostro approaching. A woman, likely a high-ranking Mostro, walked closer, sending him into a panic. In his current state, he couldn't even defeat a low-ranked Mostro. Was this where he would die? Memories flooded his mind. He recalled telling his father that his teacher had praised him, saying he could become a novelist someday. His essay, titled "Papa is a Hero," had even won an award. But he had quickly clarified to his father that he didn't want to be a novelist. He wanted to be a hero, just like him. His father had smiled proudly. Then, one day, someone informed them that his father, Ren Hanada, had betrayed the heroes and humanity. All their assets were confiscated, including their home, and they were ordered to leave by the end of the day. Daban had refused to believe it, shouting that it couldn't be true. Years later, his mother passed away from illness. With her final words, she told him to trust his father and find out the truth for her. She closed her eyes in tears, leaving Daban crying in pain. He had promised her that he wouldn't die in a place like this, because he was Ren Hanada's son. Now, with the Mostro woman calmly staring at him, Daban grabbed a nearby metal pipe, refusing to give up. Pushing himself to stand, he shouted that he wasn't afraid of Kanda or her. Clenching his teeth, he launched himself toward her, determined to fight. But before he could get close, the woman merely glared at him, raised her hand, and released a powerful force that struck him. He screamed in pain as the blast sent him flying. He slammed into the ground, bounced, and finally came to a stop. Coughing up blood, he still tried to stand, looking up in disbelief. Was she an S-Class Mostro? And if so, why was an S-Class here? Had the intel been wrong? Were the weaker Mostro from earlier just a distraction, While this was the real ambush, struggling to his feet, he knew he had to warn headquarters. But before he could act, the woman appeared in front of him in an instant, her sharp nails slashing through his body. Blood splattered everywhere as he collapsed to the ground. The woman calmed herself and stared at his lifeless body. Pathetic. He hadn't even been able to withstand that much. It confirmed her belief. Lower-ranked humans were fragile, though their souls possessed exceptional strength. She bent down beside him, reaching out slowly. A moment later, his soul was dragged into deep darkness and forced into another body. It settled perfectly, fully compatible with its new form. Suddenly, he regained consciousness, his eyes snapping open. He bolted upright in a panic, screaming. Catching his breath, he looked around, confused. Where was he? Wasn't he just on the battlefield? His gaze fell on his hands. Why am I still alive? He stumbled out of bed, calling out to see if anyone was there. He had something important to do. But then, his eyes landed on a mirror nearby. A completely different version of himself stared back. Long hair, a demon horn. Stunned, he stumbled backward, knocking over a stand with a loud crash. The noise alerted others, and moments later, 2 women entered the room. They observed him standing in front of the shattered mirror, confirming that the fusion had been successful. With trembling hands, Daban stared at his new reflection. Then, horror set in. A guttural scream tore from his throat as the realization hit him. He had turned into a monstro. Hearing approaching footsteps, he turned to see the same woman from earlier entering the room. Rage surged through him. Grabbing the golden mirror stand, he charged at her, shouting that she was the one who had turned him into this monster. Before he could reach her, a blur of motion cut through the air. The woman's guard, Ao, moved with blinding speed, striking him with a powerful kick and pinning him to the floor. She held a knife to his throat and demanded to know why he had dared to approach the princess. He looked up in confusion and asked what they meant by princess. His question surprised not only Ao, but also the demon lady herself. Standing behind him, Ao hesitated for a moment before letting him go and returning to the princess's side. The demon lady then introduced herself as Maya, princess of the demon clan. In the human military records, she was listed as the #1 ranked threat. She asked if he truly didn't know who she was. He didn't. As a lowly soldier, he had never been assigned to high-ranking missions and wouldn't have access to such classified information. Ao then informed him that if Maya hadn't extracted his soul, he would have died. He froze. What do you mean by soul extraction? Then, he recalled something from the hero's records. Mastro were classified into 4 types. The demon clan, who resembled humans the most but possessed terrifying abilities. Some were rumored to have mental powers, while high-ranking ones could separate body and soul, though no one had ever witnessed it. The winged clan, specialists in flight who carried deadly poison. The beast clan, known for their speed and extraordinary strength. The armored clan, possessing exceptional destructive and defensive capabilities. Realization struck him like a hammer. His soul had been transferred into a demon clan vessel. His breath quickened. What happened to my original body? He demanded. Maya answered without hesitation. The poison of the winged clan corrodes quickly, enough to reduce even an elephant to mere blood within 10 minutes. Your body has likely already been disposed of. The thought horrified him. He imagined professional cleaners throwing chemical-laden water over his remains, scrubbing away every last trace. His knees buckled, and he collapsed to the floor. Ao casually mentioned that she had heard humans had developed robots to clean up battlefields, drones equipped with flamethrowers that left nothing behind, not even ash. Maya mused aloud that she should get a few of those drones for herself. His mind spiraled. He pictured a drone scooping up his corpse, burning it to ash, erasing him completely. The image sent a wave of nausea through him, and he clenched his fists, shouting at them to at least show some consideration for how he felt. Maya merely looked down at him. What happens to an empty body is none of my concern, she said coolly. You should focus on adapting to your new body as quickly as possible. He retorted that she had no right to order him around. He wasn't her subordinate, and had no obligation to follow her commands. He shouted that he was human and demanded to know why she had turned him into this. Was she trying to extract information about humanity or the heroes from him? If so, she had picked the wrong person. Maya was momentarily speechless, and he took the opportunity to charge at her. "If you think I'll let myself be used by the Mostro," he yelled, "I'd rather die again," Ao scoffed. Still resisting? Before he could react, she appeared in front of him in a blur and kicked him hard, sending him crashing to the ground. Pathetic. She didn't stop there. Ao relentlessly punched and kicked him, berating him for his weakness. Raising her leg for another strike, she sneered, "You shouldn't get cocky with such pitiful strength." Then she added, "Even if it's just a vessel, it's humiliating that a weakling like you could be part of the demon clan." That was the last straw. Enraged, he shouted, "Who are you calling a weakling?" Before she could land another blow, he clenched his fist, feeling power surge through his body, and struck Ao in the stomach. The force sent her flying into the wall. Silence filled the room. Maya and Ao stared at him in shock. Even he was stunned. He looked at his trembling hand, unable to believe what he had just done. Ao was speechless. Had he really just sent her flying? Maya, meanwhile, realized something else. The power of the demon clan was tied to the strength of one's soul. How could a mere human possess such raw strength? A strange sensation spread through his body, unlike anything he had ever experienced before. Power pulsed through his veins, overwhelming and exhilarating. He turned to Maya, confused. "What's happening to me?" Maya's eyes narrowed. Then, without warning, she rushed at him, grabbed his shoulder, and threw him. He braced for impact, only to land safely on the soft bed. Before he could react, Maya climbed on top of him, straddling his body. For a brief moment, she just stared at him, her expression unreadable. He barely had time to process the situation before her grip suddenly tightened around his neck. He choked, struggling to breathe. What's happening? He tried to push himself up, but his body wouldn't move. The demonic energy that had surged through him moments ago was now completely gone. Then Maya grabbed her clothes and began removing them. His eyes widened in alarm. "What the hell are you doing?" Ignoring him, she swiftly pulled a nearby blanket over them, concealing their bodies. She pressed closer. Meanwhile, outside the room, something sinister slithered along the walls, long, vein-like tendrils creeping toward the door. They pierced through the wood, their flower-like tips blooming open to reveal eerie, blinking eyes. The eyes scanned the room. To an outsider, the scene inside looked undeniably intimate. Before the intruders could gather more information, Ao sprang into action. She grabbed one of the tendrils and snapped it in half, instantly killing the spying eye. Moving swiftly, she hunted down the remaining tendrils, slashing them apart and tearing every last vein-like structure invading the room. Maya silently watched her work, while he, still pinned beneath her, couldn't help but notice her beauty. His gaze lingered on her face. Was every demon clan woman this stunning? Maya was more breathtaking than any woman he had ever met. Realizing where his thoughts were going, he quickly looked away, scolding himself. "What the hell am I thinking?" he reminded himself. He was human. Maya was a Mastro. And yet, what is she trying to do? Was this some kind of honeypot trap? A twisted form of torture? His eyes wandered again, lingering on her figure before he forced himself to look away. Is she planning to manipulate me until the very end? Maya suddenly leaned closer, their faces mere inches apart. His breath hitched. A deep blush crept up his cheeks as he tried. He couldn't believe it. His first kiss might be stolen at death's door, and by a demon no less. Bracing himself, he squeezed his eyes shut. But instead of a kiss, something soft and slimy smacked against his face. Startled, he opened his eyes, only to see a grotesque eye with a vein still attached. With a horrified yell, he flung it away. "What the hell is that?" Maya, unfazed, calmly explained, "It's the eye of a mandala, a reconnaissance creature." His stomach churned. "You mean this place is being monitored?" Maya nodded. Ao, standing nearby, reported, "Some of the mandala escaped. Seems like there are people who really can't stop worrying about Shura's fate. The name caught his attention. Shura, he echoed, confused. Maya turned to him. The owner of the body you now inhabit. That revelation stunned him. She continued, Shura was my fiancé. His confusion only deepened. Seeing his reaction, Maya elaborated. Shura and I were supposed to get married today. But before the ceremony, he disappeared. By the time I found him, he was already dead. Her voice was steady, but there was an undercurrent of something unreadable. She admitted she still didn't know why Shura had been there, or who had killed him. But one thing was certain. The wounds on his body, she said, weren't inflicted by humans. His mind raced. Could it have been an internal conflict among the Mastro? Maya went on. The demon clan values merit above all else. Even royalty isn't exempt. If you don't keep growing stronger, you get left behind. Then she dropped another bombshell. Shura was the demon clan's strongest warrior. Losing him put me in immediate danger. To keep his death a secret, she had no choice but to merge a living soul with Shura's body. He stared at her, stunned. So, you didn't bring me here to blackmail the military? Maya met his gaze. I didn't. Then, without hesitation, she asked, Tell me, am I right in assuming you were abandoned by the military? Maya met his gaze. Her words struck him like a dagger. Ao scoffed. You're just a lowly soldier. There were no other survivors. So Maya had no choice but to pick you. That only fueled his anger. Before he could respond, Maya presented him with an ultimatum. Cooperate with us, she said, or die again. Her words sent a chill through him. He hesitated, uncertain. Then she handed him a tablet. Watch this. Suspicious, he took it and pressed play. The screen lit up with a broadcast. A military official stood at a podium, addressing the public. The heroes, he announced, have successfully defeated the Mastro in the recent battle, protecting both the lives and property of our people. The crowd erupted in cheers. The official continued, On behalf of the military, we are awarding a medal for this outstanding achievement. A name was called. You! The camera shifted, capturing Yu as he confidently stepped onto the stage. The official praised his exceptional leadership during the operation before opening a medal box and pinning the prestigious first-class medal onto Yu's uniform. They saluted each other. The audience, filled with heroes and civilians, roared with pride. Then a woman and a small child stepped onto the stage. The child, clutching a bouquet of flowers, approached Yu with wide, admiring eyes. Thank you, the child said, offering the flowers, for saving him and his mom. The child excitedly told Yu that he wanted to learn how to fight so he could become a hero and defeat the Mostro, just like him. Retsu gently told the child that he was still too young, and Darren added that such things should be left to adults. But the child confidently puffed out his chest and shouted that he wasn't a kid, and that he was strong, making everyone laugh. Yu lifted the child into his arms and thanked everyone for their trust in the heroes. He declared that defeating the Mastro and protecting the people was both their responsibility and duty, a duty in which they took great pride. He expressed hope that one day more young people would join the fight, but also warned that choosing this path meant accepting sacrifice. He urged everyone to remember that in war, they were weapons, shields, and the last line of defense for the people. Fleeing from the enemy, fearing death, or abandoning those who could not fight were acts equivalent to murder, and they would never forgive traitors. The people echoed his words, repeatedly shouting that they would never forgive traitors. Daban was shocked by this. The video ended with his picture displayed as a wanted criminal, complete with a bounty. Trembling with anger, he glared silently at his own image. Maya told him that he did not have to cooperate with them, but that no one would thank him, and he would live his life branded as a traitor. She asked if she was right in saying it was frustrating to die like this without ever having had the chance to prove himself. He shouted in response that it was indeed frustrating and demanded to know why his family had to suffer, while those who spread lies lived carefree lives. He declared that he could not die, he would live no matter what, and that one day he would get revenge on those bastards, returning everything they had done to him tenfold. In a fit of anger, he threw the tablet to the ground, smashing it into pieces. Maya watched him with a faint smile. Later, when he had calmed down, he entered a large room and saw a dragon sleeping peacefully in the center. As they approached it, he reached out to pet the creature, wondering if it was the demon clan's ride. The dragon suddenly opened its eyes and growled angrily at him. Maya quickly stepped in to protect him, releasing something from her hand for the dragon to smell. She explained that the dragon was Shura's ride, and that although his body belonged to Shura, his soul was human, causing magical beasts to react strongly. After the dragon familiarized itself with the scent, Maya squeezed the object in her hand and reformed it into a ring. She tossed it to him and explained that wearing the infron would mask his human scent. Ao then appeared, holding a stack of papers, and told him that they contained everything he needed to know about Shura. She said he should learn it all before they reached the demon palace. Dropping the pile into his hands, he shouted, asking how many days they thought it would take to memorize all of it. Io simply replied that she did not care. Maya added that he did not have to memorize it if he did not want to, but if he made even the slightest mistake, she would kill him. Her words left him standing still, completely speechless. Later, they were flying on the dragon's back. He looked down, unable to believe the world inside the gate. Demons walked the streets, talking, drinking, having fun, and selling food just like normal humans. He had always thought of the Mostro as a barbaric group, but now he wondered if this was the kind of life they led. Maya told him that the world he came from was not much different, so he would get used to it quickly. However, he disagreed, saying that humans had morals and laws and lived by helping one another, while demons only knew murder and theft. He then noticed that many things around them resembled human creations, and asked if most of the items there had been taken from humans. Ao reminded him that they were war spoils, and that it was only natural to take what could be taken. She added that if he was upset, he should try taking them back. Her words angered him, and he retorted that thieves could only speak from a thief's logic. Maya, however, simply stared at him in silence. Maya was suddenly shocked when she saw a swarm of bugs blocking their path. The bugs rushed toward them, and he covered his face in fear. But Maya calmly raised her hand, burning the bugs away as the dragon continued flying forward. He asked her what those bugs were, and why there were so many of them. Maya explained that they were horseflies, born in the abyss, and that their bites caused pain lasting for days. She then ordered the dragon to lower its altitude, and it complied. As they descended, a foul smell hit his nose. He immediately covered it, shouting that it stank. Maya explained that it was called miasma. He looked ahead and saw a dark ocean filled with monstrous fish. Smaller fish were being eaten by larger ones, but then an even bigger sea monster appeared and killed the predator. The sight surprised him. Maya explained that the abyss was where the sea met the depths of their world. She told him that, while he spoke of laws, they had their own survival rules. The strong eat the weak. She further explained that the water in the abyss was highly toxic and emitted miasma, which seeped into the air and the ground. In such an environment, the weak were not even allowed to live. Unlike humans, they could not plow fields or raise livestock because resources were scarce, forcing them to steal. Maya added that for the demon clan, life was for the strong, and death was for the weak. This was their only rule. He remembered that all the soldiers who had tried to invade the other world had died from poisoning. Every attempt had ended the same way, and he wondered if the miasma was the reason. He glanced at Maya, who was staring at the ocean of miasma, and thought that if he wanted to escape, now might be his chance. He readied his hand to push her off, but then he noticed Maya's guard nearby. Realizing he did not have enough information, he decided it was too dangerous. If he went back now and told everyone what he had seen, no one would believe him and you might kill him again. Maya looked at him and asked what he was thinking. Awkwardly, he replied that he was not thinking about anything. Maya then told him they were about to reach the center of the abyss and advised him to hold on tight. The dragon suddenly dove at high speed, creating a strong air pressure that made him scream loudly. The dragon continued flying at high speed, the pressure hitting his face and making him cry out in fear. He held on tightly, but moments later, he saw a huge castle below. As the dragon landed, he was thrown off, slamming face first into the ground. Trembling, he sat up and vomited to the side. Through his blurry vision, he saw Maya and, in his disoriented state, mistook her for his grandmother. He happily asked if she had come to pick him up, but Maya slapped him across the face, sending him sprawling and dragging across the ground. He felt hurt and looked up, confused, as the demon clan's stronghold came into view. Maya noticed 3 rye dragons resting nearby and realized the other demon generals were already there. Ao explained that the 3 demon generals were ambitious and powerful enough to challenge Maya for the throne. They were likely the ones who had released the mandala's eyes. Maya asked if he had gone through the documents, but he looked away without responding. Ao shouted at him, demanding to know if he was admitting he had not memorized anything. She aimed her knife at him, warning that deceiving the Demon King was a grave sin. If he showed even the slightest flaw, she would kill him first to protect Maya. He shouted back that they were supposed to be allies, and if they could not trust him, she might as well kill him now. Ao drew her second knife, agreeing with him, but then she noticed Maya smiling and stopped. Maya calmly told him to be careful, which left him flustered. He stood up proudly, looking at the castle, and boasted that they might not know it, but he was called the strongest brain in the army. Since he did not have any special abilities, his role was to analyze the enemy quickly and find their weaknesses. Learning about the Mastro, he claimed, was child's play for him. He assured them he had already memorized everything about the demon clan and told them to trust him. Just then, the castle gates opened, and he felt a wave of strong auras emanating from inside. He peeked in and saw a swarm of eyes glaring menacingly at him. The intensity of their stares left him speechless and terrified. Maya told him it was time to go and walked inside first. He followed, hearing the Mostro whispering about Shura, the so-called god of death. They commented that he looked normal and speculated that if they defeated him, the princess would be theirs. Their words made him feel threatened and uncomfortable. Suddenly, a huge man dashed toward them, leaping into the air as he got closer. Ao immediately rushed forward, knives in hand, but the man slapped her aside effortlessly and continued charging toward him. Maya swiftly whipped out her weapon and swung it at the man, but he dodged. She continued to strike, forcing him to retreat and jump away. Maya addressed the man as Moran, one of the demon generals, and demanded to know what he was trying to do. Moran casually replied that he was just stretching because his back hurt. Another demon general, Mami, chimed in, teasing Maya about being a newlywed and suggesting she must be busy with many things. Mari, another general, asked if Maya had found Shura, as rumors were spreading about his unknown whereabouts. Mari added that it was strange for Shura to go missing on such an important day, and asked Maya what was going on. Mami chimed in, calling Maya a generous princess, saying that if it were her, she would have torn Shura apart by now. Moran then asked if Shura had abandoned his fiancée to go off looking for a mistress. Maya realized that the information about Shura's disappearance had already leaked. She knew that if someone there had killed Shura, they would have exposed it by now. This led her to believe that they were still probing because they lacked confirmation of Shura's death. The demons in the crowd began shouting at Maya to forget Shura and marry them instead. Moran then challenged him to a duel, declaring that whoever won would get the princess. Turning to him, Moran asked what he thought about the idea. The demons cheered, eager for a duel to take place. Maya wondered what they were trying to do and quickly realized they were deliberately provoking Shura to force him into action. Ao whispered to Maya that something felt off, and they both glanced at Daban, who was trembling in silence. Meanwhile, he felt his heart pounding uncontrollably and wondered why it was beating so loudly. His body began to shake, and he realized it was fear. He had faced life and death situations countless times before, but had never felt fear like this. It was as if a sheep had wandered into a pack of wolves and was about to be hunted. Maya noticed the dark smoke surrounding him and realized someone was using an illusion. If this were the real Shura, such a weak illusion would be meaningless. But his soul was human, and at this rate, he would be crushed. However, if she intervened now, it would reveal that Shura was a fake. She was unsure what to do. Moran's figure loomed before him. His vision blurred, his chest tightened, and he felt as if his heart were being squeezed, ready to explode. Moran shouted at him to say something, but he remained silent, which only angered Moran further. Unleashing his firepower, Moran aimed his fist at him, shouting not to underestimate him. Before Moran could strike, Maya suddenly kicked him from behind, sending him slamming face first into the floor. The sudden move shocked Moran, Mommy, Mary, and all the demons watching. Maya calmly stated that a man who did not cherish her was not worth having. She warned him that if he did not clear up the misunderstanding, she would cancel their engagement right then and there. His heartbeat returned to normal, and he regained his composure. As his vision cleared, he could see Moran's shoes in front of him and realized his body could move again. Sitting up, he took a deep breath. Moran laughed and called him a coward, mocking that he could not even defeat a woman, which only proved that the princess had terrible taste. He responded that he had sensed something was off, but now he realized it was Moran's mouth. This enraged Moran, who demanded to know what had just been said. Smirking, he headbutted Moran with his horn, shouting, "How dare you insult my woman?" The strike landed with a brutal crack, sending Moran reeling as he clutched himself in agony. Io scoffed, calling him a coward, while Mommy remarked that she was glad she wasn't a man. Just watching the scene was painful enough. Mari added that Shura, the so-called god of death, was truly terrifying. He stood up, watching Moran writhe on the ground. The gathered demons were stunned. With a single blow, he had subdued one of the demon generals, leaving them relieved that they hadn't foolishly picked a fight with him. Furious, Moran cursed him and shouted that he would kill him. Before Moran could act, a voice suddenly announced the arrival of the Demon King. A rift appeared in the hall, sucking in the air around it as it rapidly expanded. As the rift grew, Maya stepped forward, introducing herself, followed by Mari and Moran. They all knelt in respect, and the rest of the demons followed suit. Maya glanced at Moran, who remained standing, and coolly asked if he intended to disrespect the Demon King. Moran's jaw tightened, but he stayed silent and reluctantly knelt. He positioned himself behind Maya, his focus fixed on the rift, waiting for the arrival of the demon's supreme leader, the only SSS-level Mastro recorded in the military files. A small, fluffy creature stepped out of the rift. It was the Demon King. He could hardly believe what he was seeing. Why does the Demon King look like a capybara? Just then, Maya's voice echoed in his mind, startling him. She told him not to be surprised. Glancing around, he realized he was the only one who could hear her. Through telepathy, Maya explained that the Demon King had grown old and now entrusted most of the kingdom's affairs to the 4 demon generals. It was rare for him to appear in person. He typically communicated through intermediaries. Even Shura had never met him face to face. For now, she instructed him to stay hidden and remain silent. The Demon King announced that an important discussion would take place today. The 4-clan meeting was about to begin, and this time, a new representative would be chosen to join. Maya remained calm, while the 3 demon generals smirked. Through telepathy, he asked Maya what the 4-clan meeting was. She explained that every 5 years, the Demon Clan, Winged Clan, Beast Clan, and Armored Clan gathered to discuss critical matters such as contracts, peace treaties, and land divisions. The most authoritative figures from each clan participated, and until now, the Demon King himself had always attended. In other words, whoever was selected as the new representative would have the potential to ascend to the throne of the Demon King. Moran stood up proudly and declared that among the 4 demon generals, he had the most subordinates and the greatest power, making him the best candidate. Maya knew that while Moran's strength was unmatched among the generals, his rough personality and lack of consideration for others made him unfit for leadership. Mary responded with a smirk, remarking that it was a shame because the role required brains, not just muscles, something Moran clearly lacked. Maya acknowledged that while Mari's power was weaker than Moran's, he was the most cunning and excelled in strategic calculations, making him the sharpest of the group. Ao then spoke up, stating that the most noble person should attend the four-clan meeting. As the Demon King's daughter, Maya was the most suitable candidate. However, Maya knew that despite her royal status, women held a low position in the Demon Clan, putting her at a disadvantage in the line of succession. Moran sneered and taunted Maya, suggesting she should focus on learning how to please men, so her husband wouldn't run away. He added that there was no place for women in matters of power. Suddenly, a venomous snake slithered toward Moran and attempted to bite him, but he dodged it effortlessly. The snake struck again, provoking an annoyed Moran, who punched it away. The serpent slithered back to Mommy, who calmly picked it up and warned Moran that if he continued to look down on women, it would be a woman who killed him. Maya observed silently, knowing that Mommy, despite being a woman, understood how to use her femininity to her advantage. Beneath her charm, she was as ruthless as any of them. Mommy had enchanted many men and commanded a large number of subordinates. Moran, narrowing his eyes, asked if she planned to fight him. She calmly replied that she wasn't, then added with a smirk that he already seemed injured and that pushing himself further would only ruin him as a man. Her remark infuriated him even more. Mari stood up and declared that it didn't matter whether someone was a man or a woman. For the Demon Clan, power was everything, and he would support whoever was the strongest. Hearing Mari's words, the other demons realized they also had a chance. They had never heard that the king would choose only from the 4 demon generals, meaning that as long as they were strong enough, they could compete to become the Demon Clan's representative. Fueled by ambition, the demons rushed at Moran, attempting to overpower him. However, to him, they were nothing more than pests. Debone observed the unfolding chaos and quickly recognized Mari's clever strategy. By skillfully turning Moran into the common enemy, Mari had not only redirected everyone's hostility, but also positioned himself as the most composed candidate. If both Moran and Mommy exhausted themselves in battle, Mari would be able to strike at the perfect moment and claim victory with minimal effort. In interspecies negotiations, strength was the ultimate trump card, and they had no time for internal conflicts. However, he found the Demon Clan's simplicity frustrating. Such infighting only led to self-destruction. As Moran fought off the attacking demons, Mommy silently drew her knife. Spotting the perfect opening, she dashed toward Moran from behind, her blade aimed straight for his back. Maya, realizing the danger, immediately lunged forward, shouting at Mommy to wait. Just as Mommy's knife was about to strike, Maya managed to block it. But before she could react further, Mommy's snake shot forward, fangs bared as it lunged at her. Without hesitation, Maya swung her whip, expertly wrapping it around the snake's body and stopping it in its tracks. Mommy let out a sigh and asked why Maya was protecting Moran when she should be siding with her. With a disappointed expression, she remarked that women should support each other, yet Maya was siding with men instead. Maya remained firm, replying that she wouldn't take sides. Killing each other at a time like this was pathetic. Her words made him smile slightly. At the very least, he thought, Maya was capable of using her head. However, he noticed that the other demons were only concerned with their own interests and wouldn't listen to reason. Suddenly, Moran drew his massive sword and leaped toward Mammy and Maya. He shouted for them to watch out, causing Maya to turn back and release Mammy's snake just as Moran's sword came crashing down, slicing the creature in half. The sheer force of the attack sent both Mommy and Maya flying. Ao caught Maya, while Mommy's snake, despite its injuries, looked worriedly at its master. Mommy assured the creature that she was fine, though her expression darkened with anger over its injury. Mari smirked and teased Moran, remarking that he had gone too far by harming Mommy's precious pet. Mommy gently stroked the wounded snake before turning a furious glare toward Moran. In a cold voice, she warned that if anything happened to her child, she would never forgive him. With that, Mommy floated into the air and slowly vanished. Moran sneered, mocking her retreat. "Running away because you're weak?" he taunted. "Don't blame others for your own incompetence." His gaze swept across the gathered demons, his confidence unwavering. With a smug grin, he declared, "None of you are anything special. If anyone here wants to die, come at me." The demons glanced at the lifeless bodies of their fallen comrades and finally understood the overwhelming gap in strength. With both Maya and Mami now out of the picture, they saw no point in resisting. Fear took hold, and one by one they backed away. Satisfied, Moran turned to the Demon King. "You saw that, right? No one has any objections," he proclaimed. The Demon King's gaze swept over the silent crowd. "Is this true?" he asked. Neither Maya nor Mari responded. Taking their silence as confirmation, the Demon King announced, "Very well. Moran will represent the Demon Clan at the Four Races Conference." But before the decision could be finalized, Debone suddenly raised his hand. "Wait, Your Majesty," he shouted, stepping forward. Gasps rippled through the hall. Maya and Io stared at him in shock, unable to believe what he was doing. Moran frowned in confusion, while Mari chuckled, his eyes gleaming with amusement. "Oh? Are you interested in the conference as well?" he asked mockingly. Debone ignored him. Feigning surprise, Mari turned to the crowd and mused, "It seems Maya's man isn't just playing around. He has ambition too." Io clenched her fists, thinking he was being reckless. There was no way he could take on Moran. What was he thinking? Through telepathy, Maya urgently told him to stop, but he only smiled and assured her, "It's fine. I know what I'm doing." Moran's grin widened. "Good," he said. "I still owe you for earlier." Moran leaped into the air, ready to bring his sword down on Debon, convinced that killing him would allow him to claim Maya for himself. But Debon remained calm and simply told Moran that he wasn't there to fight him. Moran hesitated, momentarily thrown off. "What do you mean by that?" he demanded, his anger flaring. Debon stepped closer and whispered something into Moran's ear. Whatever he said left Moran visibly shaken. Debon then met Moran's eyes with an unwavering, confident stare, further fueling the Demon General's frustration. Moran turned toward the Demon King and, to everyone's shock, admitted that he had been reckless. He then stated that Maya should be the one to participate in the Four Races Conference. The entire hall fell into stunned silence. Moran crossed his arms and added that, as the Demon King's daughter, Maya was the most fitting choice to attend in his place. Mari narrowed his eyes. "What are you playing at?" he asked. Moran scoffed. "I meant exactly what I said." He then explained that everyone had been too focused on the immediate battle, failing to consider the bigger picture. Even if they participated in the tournament, it would be meaningless. With so many of them injured, the other three tribes would only laugh at them. The demons grumbled among themselves before one of them asked, "Are you admitting that you fought the hardest?" Moran's expression darkened. "Shut up." The demons immediately fell silent, too afraid to challenge him further. The Demon King nodded. Moran has relinquished his right and recommended Maya as the representative. Does anyone oppose? Moran cast a menacing glare at the crowd. "Anyone who objects will be my enemy," he warned. Mari hesitated, but, upon noticing the sharp look in Debon's eyes, let out a small chuckle. "If Moran is in favor, I have no objections." The other demons quickly followed suit, unwilling to challenge the decision. The Demon King then turned to Maya. "Very well. Maya, you will represent the Demon Tribe at the Four Races Tournament. Do not betray our expectations. Ensure the Demon Tribe's interests are secured." Ao let out a breath of relief, while Maya respectfully bowed. "I will not disappoint." After the meeting, Moran sat atop his red dragon, staring down at Debon with a hard, unreadable expression. For a brief moment, he glared at him. Then, without a word, he turned and flew away. Ao immediately turned to Debon. "What did you say to make him back down?" Debon simply shrugged. "You were watching, weren't you?" "I didn't do anything significant." Ao frowned, unconvinced. Moran isn't someone who backs down easily. Don't play dumb. Answer properly. Maya also studied him closely, waiting for an explanation. Under their combined stares, Debon grew flustered before finally sighing. Fine. It wasn't anything extraordinary." He paused, then smirked. I just asked him if he thought he'd survive, if word got out that he was selling Beast Tribe infants to the Wing Tribe for poison resistance experiments. Silence. Eo's eyes widened in disbelief. Moran was selling Beast Tribe infants? Maya's expression hardened. She now understood why Moran had given up his rights so easily. I've never heard of such a thing, she said, her voice steady but sharp. Where did you get this information? Daban tapped his temple with a smug grin. I told you, my brain is my greatest weapon. He explained that the military's archives contained classified documents with high-level Mastro information, accessible only to the upper echelons. However, you had assigned low-ranking soldiers to do chores, which gave him access to the archives. He added that once he saw something, he never forgot it. The documents also contained incriminating information about Moran. Not only had he sold infants, but he had also shifted the blame onto the human military. As a result, the Beast Tribe and humans had gone to war to recover the stolen infants, leading to massive casualties and destruction. Eo asked if his ability to memorize information so easily was due to prior preparation. Smirking, he replied, So, you're finally realizing I'm not as incompetent as you thought. Maya admitted that he had, at last, proven himself useful. He puffed out his chest proudly, declaring that his true value had yet to be fully revealed. Maya was momentarily speechless before she smiled and said, I see. I'll look forward to seeing more. Suddenly a voice chimed in. I expected you to persuade Moran easily. It was Mari. Daban turned to him and scoffed. Moran is a brainless fool. But you're the real deal. The type who incites others to fight while sitting back to reap the rewards. Mari chuckled. Oh, come now, I was just joking. Then his gaze sharpened as he added, But there's something different about you now. Your aura has changed. Daban narrowed his eyes. What kind of aura? Mari's smile didn't fade, but his eyes gleamed with curiosity. The scent of fear. The kind humans emit when they're terrified. Maya and Ao tensed at his words, but Daban remained outwardly calm, though a flicker of irritation crossed his face. Mari leaned in slightly, his grin widening. Tell me, why does someone from the demon tribe reek of human fear? Daban swallowed, unsure how to respond. Fortunately, Ao stepped in, her voice sharp. That's a rude thing to say, Mari. Mari shrugged. Perhaps I was mistaken, he said, though his intrigued expression suggested otherwise. Still, it's strange. Before the tension could escalate, Maya quickly intervened. Shura has killed countless humans. It wouldn't be surprising if their blood has soaked into his clothes. Mari considered her words before nodding. That does make sense. His smirk returned as he glanced between them. It seems you found not only a good husband, but also a reliable ally. With a laugh, he turned and walked away. Once he was out of earshot, Ao frowned. What did he mean by that? Maya's expression darkened slightly. Mari specializes in mental manipulation. He enjoys the fear and despair his prey feels right before death. She paused before adding, I suspect he was the one who released the magical energy toward him earlier. And now, it seems Mari is suspicious of him. Dabon exhaled slowly. Then, what should we do about it? He clenched his fists. That sensation, being completely dominated by fear, it felt like my bones were being crushed. He was grateful that Maya had been there to help, but he was certain he wouldn't be able to withstand it next time. Maya warned him that after today, Moran would undoubtedly target him, and Mari would start probing further. She added that she and Ao couldn't stay by his side all the time, so he needed to gain the strength to protect himself and convince everyone that he was the real Shura. Ao interjected, reminding Maya that he was too weak to even defeat normal demons, let alone someone like Moran or Mari. Annoyed, he turned to her. Who are you calling weak? Without hesitation, she pointed at him. You, obviously. Maya then told him that while his soul was human, his body belonged to Shura, and that could be useful. A moment later, they arrived at a mountain and stopped in front of a massive castle. He asked Maya what the place was, and she explained that it was Shura's armory. She informed him that Shura had a habit of taking the weapons of the enemies he killed as souvenirs. However, since he had slain so many, he eventually ran out of space to store them and created this special warehouse. Maya pushed the heavy doors open, and they followed her inside. He was awestruck by the vast collection of weapons displayed neatly across the armory, a testament to Shura's reputation as the god of death. He couldn't help but wonder just how many lives Shura had taken. As he walked past the relics, he recognized a shield from the Gao tribe, a weapon from the Beast tribe, military guns, and even fangs from the Wing tribe. His stomach twisted in disgust. Did Shura really bring back a Wing tribe's fang? He asked, his expression grim. That's sick! Maya, unfazed, replied, Shura's strength was unparalleled, and it wasn't just because of his physical power. There was another reason. She pointed toward the center of the warehouse, where a dark sword stood, radiating a bloody, menacing aura. That, she said, is Shura's sword, Deverolf. He studied the blade and scoffed. Doesn't seem particularly special. A sharp smack landed on his head. You idiot! Ao snapped. Don't blaspheme with your narrow mindset. Rubbing his head, he glared at her. What was that for? Ao ignored him and turned back to the sword. When Deverolf first appeared, she said, it sparked an unprecedented war in the demon realm. Moran, Mari, and Mami had fought over it, suffering severe injuries. Even the Demon King couldn't handle Deverolf. The conflict only ended when Shura intervened, and countless demons perished without even touching the sword. Despite this, he still questioned whether the sword was truly that remarkable. Maya explained that Deverolf wasn't just any weapon. It was a powerful demon with a life of its own. Those struck by the sword had their life force absorbed, turning into the master's flesh and blood. The more he killed, the stronger both the sword and its wielder would become. Even without magical power, by using Deverolf to absorb the power of demons, he could grow stronger. He nodded, realizing that if he absorbed enough magical power, he could become like Shura. But he swore he wouldn't just become Shura, he would surpass him. Yet, only moments later, Ao and Maya watched him with disappointment. Ao asked Maya if he had any real battle experience, pointing out that he couldn't even defeat the lowest-ranked magical beasts. He was getting beaten up by a small Mastro, unable to dodge its attacks. The creature repeatedly struck him in the head and stomach, leaving him cursing loudly. Despite their small size, Mastros were far stronger than they appeared. One of them leapt at him, aiming to stab him with its sharp horns. He quickly grabbed his sword and swung it, but the weapon was too heavy for him to control. Instead of striking the Mostro, the sword plunged into the ground. He struggled to pull it free, cursing in frustration, but then panicked when he saw the Mostro open its mouth, ready to bite him. He ran away, abandoning the sword, and shouted at the creature not to eat him. Maya had known he was weak, but she hadn't expected it to be this bad. Ao was equally disappointed, remarking that he couldn't even handle a weapon properly. She thought it was absurd that he believed he could surpass Shura, calling humanity a race of big talkers. Maya observed that while his body was Shura's, he lacked Shura's power, which was why Deverolf didn't recognize him as its master. She wondered if she had misjudged him, recalling the moment he had released a burst of power to push Ao away earlier. Meanwhile, the Mastro lunged at him again. This time, he managed to swing his body to the side, narrowly avoiding the attack. The creature landed safely behind him, teasingly smiling at him. He noticed a scratch on his body and the Mastro's sharp teeth. The small Mastros in front of him grinned menacingly, making him realize just how much he was struggling. Seeing this, Maya dashed toward him at incredible speed. She whipped out her weapon and swung it effortlessly, sending the Mastros flying. The remaining creatures gathered at a distance, trembling in fear. He sat down, catching his breath, but Maya told him they should call it a day. He disagreed, standing up and insisting that he had just been careless earlier and would do better this time. Maya coldly agreed and turned to leave, but before she did, she warned him that if anyone saw tooth marks from a low-ranked magical beast on Shura's body, there would be a huge uproar. He looked at the small scratch on his body, frustrated, and hit Deverolf, shouting that it was too heavy and hard to wield. He asked if there was any way to make it lighter. Maya explained that a magical sword like Deverolf only recognized those who could make it stronger as its master. If it determined he had no value, it wouldn't let him wield it. He remembered a time when a hero had called low-ranking soldiers worthless trash with no special abilities. The hero had shouted at them, saying they were just in the way and a burden on the battlefield. He had ordered them to clean up the dead bodies of monsters, warning them not to miss anything because the remains were needed for research. The soldiers had protested, saying it was too dangerous, as the building looked like it was about to collapse. They suggested letting the robots handle it, but the hero had snapped, asking if they knew how expensive it was to maintain robots compared to their worthless lives. The hero had reminded them that their value to the army was that low and that they shouldn't complain about danger. He turned to Maya and asked if she also thought he had no value. Maya was surprised but simply told him he must be tired and should rest. She assured him that even if he couldn't use Deverolf, he shouldn't worry because Ao would protect him. This angered him, and he shouted that he wasn't going to be protected by a woman. Without warning, he dashed toward the group of Mastros gathered nearby, shocking Maya. She shouted at him, demanding to know what he was planning to do. He launched his fist at the Mastros, shouting at them to try biting him with their big mouths. His taunt provoked them, and Maya warned him that without Deverolf, he didn't stand a chance. She told him that attacking recklessly would only drain his stamina. Ao, however, remarked that humanity was truly young and playful. The Mastros pounced on him together. One bit his leg, and another bit his arm. As they overwhelmed him, Maya shouted for him to shake them off, worried that he would be devoured without a single bone left. But he held on to the Mastros tightly, refusing to let go. Maya immediately prepared to use her whip, but Ao was shocked when she realized he was deliberately letting himself be bitten. She asked if he was insane. As he gathered all the Mastros around him, he glanced at Deverolf and sprinted toward it. When he got closer, the sword emitted a small, bright light. As he reached for it, the light grew stronger, forcing Maya and Ao to cover their faces. A second later, they saw him holding Deverolf. Ao realized he had used his own body as bait, attracting the magical beasts and feeding them to Deverolf. She called him foolish, knowing it had been a suicidal act, but Maya remained silent. He excitedly told them that Deverolf felt lighter than before, as if some kind of power was flowing into his body. He said it felt strange, and asked if this was what it felt like to be recognized by the sword. Maya approached him and told him that what he had done was too dangerous. He had almost become a sacrifice, but he simply asked if it hadn't worked, adding that the greater the risk, the greater the reward. He declared that if he couldn't take risks like this, he would never become the strongest man in the demon clan. His words made Maya blush, but she quickly regained her composure and told him it was too early to get cocky. She explained that Deverolf wouldn't be satisfied with just low-level magical beasts, and the power he had gained was only a fraction of what he would need. Maya then told him that in 10 days, before the four-clan conference, Marin would surely make a move. From now on, he would face even stronger magical beasts. He proudly agreed, shouting that they should bring it on because Deverolf was hungry. Maya looked at Ao, who smiled and nodded in agreement. He was excitedly swinging his sword around when he suddenly noticed something and was shocked to see a swarm of beasts inside a huge cage. Ao teased him, saying his next opponent was a gale. He shouted that there were too many of them. A moment later, he was busy fighting the gales, easily slicing through them with his sword. He skillfully stabbed one Mastro, feeling refreshed by the sensation of leveling up. He spotted the last gale growling at him and proudly declared he would finish it off. But when he struck the gale on the head, it cried out and ran away, leaving him furious. He immediately chased after it. Minutes later, he found himself deeper in the forest, looking around and wondering where the gale had gone. He heard something moving behind a nearby bush and approached it, thinking he had found his target, only to be shocked at the sight before him. The gale lay dead on the ground, being devoured by a massive beast. He instantly recognized it as an advanced magical beast and knew that, with his current strength, defeating it would be difficult. However, The thought of absorbing a large amount of power if he succeeded was tempting. He glanced at Deverolf, wondering if he should take the risk. Just then, he heard another movement from a different bush. He turned, wondering who was there, and was stunned to see Mommy emerge, severely injured. Mommy looked up and met his gaze, but he remained still, staring at her. He wondered why the demoness was there. Had she followed them? Had she overheard their conversation? He also noticed the extent of her injuries. Glancing back at the advanced magical beast, he realized that if they didn't act carefully, they would end up fighting among themselves. He decided to wait for the right moment and take advantage of the situation. Meanwhile, Mommy thought to herself that no man had ever resisted her charm. She planned to use him to distract the magical beast while she made her escape. Suddenly, she stepped on a tree branch, causing a loud crack that immediately caught the beast's attention. Both of them panicked as they realized the beast had noticed them. The creature rushed toward them, and Mommy softly begged him to help her. Instead, he turned and ran away, shouting at the beast to eat her if it was hungry. His reaction shocked her, but before he could escape, a massive snake slithered out and wrapped around his body, stopping him in his tracks. The snake dragged Mommy closer to him, and she instinctively clung to him from behind. She whispered in his ear, asking if he shouldn't act like a hero and save her, saying that running away was just awful. She added that if he was still a man, he should protect her. He shouted at her to stay away, saying his wife hated her, and that Maya would be upset if she saw them like this. Mommy licked his neck and teased that if the world found out the god of death was controlled by his wife, they'd laugh at him. But he didn't care, and kept running, shouting that he wasn't interested. The beast gathered flames in its mouth and spat them in their direction. He ran as fast as he could, realizing the creature was a fire element magical beast. However, he wasn't fast enough. Just before the flames hit, Mommy jumped off his back and landed on his shoulder, hitting him and causing him to shout in pain. She then flipped through the air and landed in front of him, but the force of the explosion pushed him further back, making him curse loudly. Fortunately, he managed to escape the flames and threw Mommy to the ground. She smiled at him as he frantically extinguished the flames on his back. Once the fire was out, he turned his attention to Mommy, immediately standing up and shouting at her, calling her a coward for using him as a shield. Mommy grabbed his shoulder and told him they were the same. He had tried to use her as bait to escape too. He shouted at her to let go, but she refused. Just then, he heard the beast approaching. Cursing loudly, he grabbed Mammy by the waist and ran with all his might, carrying her in his arms. Moments later, he reached the edge of a cliff. Below was a poisonous river, and he realized it was a dead end. The beast emerged from the forest and charged toward them. He remembered Maya telling him that even the demon clan couldn't survive the poison from the abyss. He knew that if he faced the magical beast head-on, his true identity would be revealed to Mommy, exactly what she was aiming for. With no other choice, he shouted, "There's no choice but to do it!" He continued running toward the cliff, the beast hot on his heels. Mommy asked what he was trying to do, but when she saw the cliff approaching, she shouted at him, demanding to know if he was out of his mind. She reminded him that below was the abyss, and tried to escape his grasp, yelling at him not to drag her into it. Instead, he tightened his hold on her, telling her that she had been clinging to him moments ago, so trying to run away now was impossible. He leaped off the cliff, the beast still chasing them. The creature lunged after them, but as it did, he stabbed Dvarolf into the stone wall. The sword dug deep into the rock, halting their fall. The beast, however, plummeted past them and crashed into the poisonous river below. Within seconds, its massive body began to dissolve, leaving behind only bones. He was horrified, unable to comprehend how such a large magical beast could disintegrate so quickly. The poison was truly terrifying. Glancing at Mommy, he suddenly felt a strange, cold sensation. Looking down, he noticed her legs trembling, and in the midst of it all, he realized she had peed. Disgusted, he stared at her. Mommy, her face burning with humiliation, snapped that it was the first time she had ever been so embarrassed in front of a man. Then, without warning, her snake bit him on the side of his butt. Mommy shouted for him to die, making him scream in pain. His agonized cries echoed above the cliff. And then she shoved him off. Plummeting downward, he cursed loudly, calling her a bastard and demanding to know why she was treating him like this after he had just saved her life. Coldly, she replied that demons didn't feel gratitude and that he had missed his chance to retaliate earlier. Hovering above him, she smirked, giving him an impressive view as she warned him not to hold back, because she certainly wouldn't. He shouted, demanding to know what she was planning. Mommy suddenly dropped down and straddled him, and he immediately realized just how bad his situation had become. Why did all demon women seem so obsessed with dominating others? He recalled that while some demon women couldn't match men in sheer physical strength, they had other ways of draining their opponent's power, methods far more dangerous than brute force. As Mommy leaned in closer, he trembled, dreading the thought of losing the magical power he had worked so hard to gain. He instinctively reached for Dvarov, but before he could grab it, Mommy's snake coiled tightly around his wrist, stopping him. She smiled and told him it was useless to resist. She then explained that he had already been poisoned by her snake's venom, a toxin designed specifically for men. If he lay still, he would be fine. But if he tried to move, the poison would spread instantly, causing him to explode. He shouted in disbelief, calling it a vile poison. Mommy, however, simply licked her finger and teased that if he couldn't resist any longer, she would be happy to enjoy it. She tore open his shirt, only to freeze in surprise. His body was covered in scratches. He panicked, realizing these were the wounds he had sustained while fighting low-level magical beasts. Mommy, however, looked intrigued. For someone as serious as Maya, she mused, this was a rather interesting taste. Tempted, Mommy bent down to lick him, declaring that the power of the god of death was now hers, making him scream in horror. Just as Mommy was about to drain his strength, a whip suddenly lashed toward her. She jumped away just in time to avoid it. Maya's voice rang out, demanding to know what they were doing. Ao, furious, shouted at him, accusing him of having an affair while they were out searching for him. He protested, insisting it wasn't what it looked like, that Mommy had poisoned him. Ao scoffed, retorting that if he was truly poisoned, he shouldn't be so energetic. She angrily asked if he was mocking her. Maya snapped at him to get up immediately, but he explained that Mommy had warned him. If he stood, the poison would spread through his body and make him explode. Without hesitation, Ao grabbed a fistful of his hair and yanked him to his feet, ignoring his protests. Nothing happened. He froze for a moment before realizing he had been tricked. Furious, he spun toward Mommy, shouting at her for deceiving him. Mommy only laughed, teasing that she never expected the god of death to be so simple-minded. She cooed that he was adorable. He wondered if she was even sane, considering she had just tried to kill him and was now flirting as if nothing had happened. Mommy smiled sweetly and told him she would let him off for today, adding that she would see him again soon. As she flirtatiously trailed her fingers down his chest, she suggested that next time they should enjoy themselves together. He coldly replied that if she wanted to live, she should find someone else to toy with. But Mammy only wrapped her arms around his neck, purring that when a man says no, it's often just a sign to keep going. Before he could react, she kissed his cheek, then turned and walked away, leaving him speechless. Unbeknownst to him, Ao and Maya stood behind him, fuming with anger. Ao trembled with rage, furious that he had dared to flirt with another woman right in front of Maya. Meanwhile, Mommy walked off, clearly pleased with herself. Maya, her voice cold, called out to her, commanding her to stop. Mommy paused, turning back just as Maya aimed her whip at her. Maya reminded her that this mountain was her territory. Did Mommy really think she could come and go as she pleased? Mommy smirked. She said she was surprised to see Maya jealous. Then, her expression shifted as she revealed she hadn't come alone. Mommy explained that earlier, she had been hunting demons, absorbing their power to heal her snake. After consuming a few demons, she had felt better and asked her snake if the magic had helped it recover. She had sworn to her snake that one day she would skin Moran alive to make him pay for what he had done. While she was speaking to her snake, she had suddenly heard a noise nearby. When she went to investigate, she had spotted Moran's flying dragon resting, She had overheard Moran's voice, questioning why Shura had suddenly returned to the demon realm when he wasn't supposed to be there. Moran had wondered aloud if he had been tricked. Mari appeared, replying that he had just found out as well, and that the mandala's eyes he had sent out were completely obscured, meaning they had likely been discovered. Mami was shocked to see Moran and Mari together. She wondered if they were collaborating. She then heard Moran ask Mari what he planned to do, and if he was really going to let Maya do as she pleased. Mari, unfazed, asked why Moran was so anxious. He reminded Moran that there was still time before the four-clan council, and that, if things went well, they might be able to eliminate an enemy when the opportunity arose. Moran narrowed his eyes and asked what Mari meant, but before he could answer, a small beast suddenly appeared in front of Mommy and bit her leg. The noise caught Moran and Mari's attention.